Hiring an appointment setter can be one of the biggest breakthroughs in your business, or it can be an expensive waste of your time. I've hired appointment setters across different countries and different price points, and I've actually seen what works compared to what works in theory. So in this video, I'm going to show you the complete process to hiring an appointment setter that actually performs. Look, most founders approach hiring an appointment setter completely wrong. They go straight to the Philippines or Egypt, hire someone for $5 an hour, and wonder why it's not working. Or they try to hire someone locally and realize they can't afford someone good. But there's a better way. I'm gonna break down the complete hiring process, where to find quality setters, how to vet them properly, what to look for versus what to avoid, and how to set them up for success. Whether you're hiring your first appointment setter or you've been burnt in the past, this framework actually works. So when it comes to hiring an appointment setter, most people get a lot of things wrong. They understand that they have a lead gen problem or they have too many leads coming in, and they jump straight into this with no structure, no understanding of what needs to be done, and they set them up to fail straight away. And then what happens is the founders doing the lead gen themselves, they don't actually set up the system, they're just used to doing it, and they have no processes dialed in. They then assume that they can hire someone with skill and just allow that appointment setter to just dial into their systems, which don't exist, and get results. And what's strange is they look to hire for price rather than results. And when they're talking about a person that's going to generate them revenue, they're looking at it all wrong. You know, you need to be getting the best people in, but you can still be tactical with how much you're spending to rapidly scale your business. And lastly, they don't understand the difference between an appointment setter and other sales roles. Now, an appointment setter may not be a good closer, and most of the time they're not, and that's absolutely fine because what they're good at and what they're an expert at is generating new business. Just like a closer is great at closing deals, they're not good appointment setters or not good lead generators because they don't enjoy that. With an appointment setter, they actually enjoy this. They enjoy getting them on the phones and actually generating the business. And this is such a critical thing that if you put someone in the wrong seat, you're setting them up to fail. Now, before you even hire an appointment setter, what you need to make sure is that you have your business dialed in, okay? Because if you're setting someone up into your business without these fundamentals, you're setting them up to fail, and this is going to hurt you, okay? Now, you need to understand exactly who your ICP is, okay? So your ideal customer profile, who it is that you're targeting, who it is that you can help, and who it is that you're going to obviously get as a client. Without this really dialed in, you're basically getting that appointment setter to go out into the world and not know who they're going to talk to. And the issue is that you're setting them up to fail, because if your ICP is not dialed in, then you're going to be speaking to everyone, and those who speak to everyone speak to no one. And you need to be very careful to get someone into this business without you having this dialed in, okay? So that's the first thing that we need to get locked in on. From there as well, I see a lot of people going to agencies or trying to hire an appointment setter before they even know if their offer is dialed in and actually converts, okay? So what you need to have is be making sure that what you're selling actually works and package it. So founders normally need to get out there and actually test this themselves, because it's quite hard for an appointment setter to be doing this and trialing it because they're speaking about this offer. Now, obviously, if they're following the right formula, they won't need to speak about it directly, but you need to get out there yourself and try this and make sure it's working, because someone can't come into your business with an offer that doesn't exist or doesn't work. So this is what you need to focus on, that ICP and that offer, to make sure it's all dialed in and making sense for someone to actually then talk about. So from there, you need to have some understanding of how you're going to do your outreach, okay? Is this through cold emails? Is this through LinkedIn? Is this through cold calling? You have to have a fundamental understanding of where you're getting results. Now, if you want to hire someone that's already doing it and the experts, that's going to cost you a lot of money when they're coming in with their experience. Now, from what I've seen, it can work, but the business needs to be leading the way on the outreach, because if you let someone off the chain and they do it their way, they don't understand all the IP and all the information that you've had previously, and it does hamper you. So you need to have it fundamentally documented of where and how you're going to get these leads so that they can follow this. And then if they are experienced and they have done this before, they can put their twist on it, which is only going to help it. Another really important thing is an appointment setter won't know what qualifies for your service initially. As they get better, then they're obviously going to be able to do this for you. But you need to have qualification questions that allows you to know if they qualify, so you're not wasting time booking on unqualified leads. Alongside that, you need to follow a process of asking questions to actually make sure that this person is ICP. And when I say is ICP, I mean, yes, they could be your ideal client profile, but they may not be hitting that revenue target. They may not have the problems that you solve, which means that that person isn't actually going to need your services. So there's no point talking to them. Now you can obviously outreach to them, but there's a certain point that it becomes a waste of time. So these are all the things that you need to have fundamental understanding of, which is why you need to have the ideal profile and the offer, so you know exactly how to package this together. And lastly, you need to have key metrics in place. You need to understand what success looks like for this appointment setter. If you don't know yourself of what success is, how can they measure this? Because a lot of these people are commission driven. They want to see the results. They want to understand how much money they could be making. Alongside that, they need to understand exactly what they need to do day to day so that you can get success. Just like a business, you need to have key metrics and key things in place on a day-to-day task so that it's all going in the right direction rather than just being sporadic. And this is a little bit of a reality check. If you don't have these in place, the best appointment setter will struggle in your business because it's so unfair to get them to expect results when you don't know how your business operates yourself or what to offer. And setters can't create the ICP. They can't create the offer. Sometimes they can't create the questions because if they don't know all the things above, they can't do this on their own. So this is where the founder having this in place allows them to hit the ground running rather than being on the back foot and struggling. And with that clear system, you're setting both of you guys up to fail. And that is not what you want to be doing when you're spending money monthly on a now new employee. And here's the other reality check that hits home. Cheap appointment setters cost you more money and waste more of your time because one, they're burning leads, and that's costing you X amount of money depending on how much your leads cost. And two, you have opportunity cost because it's costing you time, your training, and this is then pushing you back months to where your goals are. Investing a little bit more time and a little bit more money on the right appointment setter is a massive, massive benefit to your business. It's going to make you more money and save you loads of time and get your message correct. The goal isn't to hire the cheapest appointment setter. It's to get the person that's going to get you to the ROI the quickest and hit your goals the fastest. So there's certain places that people go to hire, and let's break it down. The first one is the Philippines. So the Philippines is typically about $5 an hour to get someone to do appointment setting. Now this can be great, but what we found is it's low cost and normally there's a lot of barriers with the language. The other thing is the time zone is not good for the UK and the US. This can really damper follow-ups. Alongside that, work-life balance, it's not the best. The other major thing is culture difference. The Philippines are such amazing people, but it's a very different culture setup compared to the UK and the US. Certain questions, communication, casual conversations can be really difficult to them because it's just not in their nature. What I've seen is it works really well on like blue chip bigger companies because of the monopoly they have. The negatives don't outweigh the positives of the cheap and like basically allowing them to have more of them. This is what you see the big companies like Apple, all these other ones, they can go in here. But for smaller businesses, it really hampers because you don't have the credibility. Sometimes you don't have that much trust. And as soon as this happens, they can pick up on it quick and they run fast. Now the other one's the obvious one, hiring local in the UK or US or anywhere else in the Western world. Now there's definitely good talent here for sure, but it's very expensive. It can be $30 to $50 to $60 to $70,000 pounds a year for these people. Now they have very good culture, very good communication, as obviously they are in the same language and the same culture. But it's very hard to scale when you're generating under $30,000 or even just if you're over this, because if you want to continue to scale with more to get more output, then it's an expensive exercise. You may need an office, you may need a full office setup, and it's a competitive marketplace where a lot of UK and US people have certain expectations when they're getting a UK employee or a US employee. Now, it can definitely be worth it when you've scaled up and you have revenue to spare where you want a local presence. But normally with founders, around, I would say under $60,000 a month, it can really be an expensive exercise where you kind of only have one or two, when in reality you could have 4 or 5 with the outputs you're having. And a lot of people tend to reduce their outputs, for example, follow-ups or cold calls, because they're limited to budget. So then we have South Africa, which is a hidden gem. English is the primary language in South Africa and it's professional communication and culture. The culture is very similar to the UK and US. Specifically for the UK, it's only 1 or 2 hour time zone difference, which makes it really good work-life balance for South Africans and obviously into the UK. And for the US, it's very similar to the Philippines, but a lot of South Africans will happily work the US hours because they enjoy working for US companies. And when you think about outreach, a South African accent, especially in the UK and even in the US, can actually feel like a local presence, which is a superpower. What we see a lot of the time is a lot of people, especially doing like cold calling or any voice messages, when they're sending these messages to UK, US, a lot of people ignore it. There's a big drop-off rate. But with South Africans, it actually allows it to feel like someone locally calling them. And that is a massive, massive benefit when they're on the phones and even when they're sending voice messages or text, because it's more to the lingo of what the UK and the US do. And though it is Africa, South Africa has very close ties to the UK. So culture-wise, like business-wise, it's very similar. How they work, how they ethically talk. For example, the financial services over there, it's about 70%, 80% like the UK. Now that's a great example because it shows how they're kind of tied together. And this is massively cost effective. Like you can get a good appointment setter in South Africa for around 900 to £1,000. That's roughly about 1,100 to 1,300 USD, okay? Which allows you to get 2, even 3 for 1 compared to locally in the UK. And this allows you to rapidly scale and they'll be just as good, if not better. And this is why this is our go-to route when hiring. We hire exclusively in South Africa for appointment setters. Now, this aligns with their time zone. So it actually makes them want to work better because it allows them to be working around their lifestyle. And if they got kids or if they're young and they want to go do stuff in their evening, they can do this rather than working in night shifts. Now, another thing is there's a common trend with a lot of South Africans wanting to work with overseas employees. And the reason being is that there's better opportunity, better ways to make more money, more commission, because normally Western countries have a bigger offer. Meaning if you're giving them 5% of a $3,000 offer or pounds, they're getting that 150 commission, which is a really big input into their lifestyle. And they're hungry for this. And a lot of them have international experience, which is fantastic. They get it. They understand what you need in your business and what the UK and the US have. And a lot of the industries are very similar to the UK and the US. So they have that experience to cross over from South Africa to the UK. And rather than next day follow-ups or cold calling at 12 a.m. their time when they're tired, they're doing it in their time zone, which is allowing them to be more efficient and have a healthier lifestyle as well. And like I said before, their communication is literally like it's a local. So when they're communicating, you just feel like you're talking to someone in the UK and the US. And that goes a massive way. One of the biggest feedbacks we've ever had when we use Filipinos or I've spoken to Filipinos was it makes the product feel cheaper because it feels like you're not talking to someone right next to you. And though that may not be true, it's just this psychological thing that has been drained into the Western world when they get a phone call from the Philippines or India or Egypt. And this is something that you as a business, especially as a small business, need to be overcoming because you need to be competitive and one step ahead. And some key things to consider, okay? So even just looking at South Africa and the benefits we talked about, the other things that are really important is cheap doesn't always mean less time. It actually means you're gonna have to spend more time managing them. So yes, you may save £300 or £400 a month or dollars a month on, let's say, someone in the Philippines compared to the South Africa, but how much time do you have to put into the Philippines compared to South Africa? Now, if you're having to spend 5 or 6 or 7 hours extra a week, you're almost basically losing a whole week of work. So what does that opportunity cost for you? And that's the hidden cost that people don't think about. And they don't think about this in most business things as well. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. And the other thing, like we talked about with the accent, you need to think about if the accent is going to be important, because if that is one thing that your audience is going to be disheartened by. For example, let's say you have a lot of cold traffic coming into your business and they've seen an ad and they're coming in, and the first thing they're going to get is a phone call with someone from the Philippines or with an accent, and that they think it's overseas. Will they think this is a premium product? I don't know. You answer that for me. Compared to someone speaking with a fluent English accent, though obviously it's going to have a South African twang in it, most people who hear the South African twang think it's Australian or think it's New Zealand, which is funny, and be just fine with it. They'll just act normal. And this is the 10 or 20% benefit that can help you book more calls. And it's really powerful. So we need to be careful with the appointment setters because they're very good at selling themselves. So when we're hiring them, there's a very good vetting process that we need to go through. Now with sales, being good at an interview does not mean you're good at sales. Now, doing the interview good is important, but a lot of the time it comes just simply down to attitude and desire to work. You need to be testing their actual performance, not just their communication skill. So giving tests that can showcase their skill set and their language and how they communicate and how they do cold call is critical. And their past experience matters less than their capacity and capability to learn and their fit into your business. Now, testing wise, you need to give them a real scenario that fits your business. So for example, for messaging, get them to start messaging you like they would prospects. So this allows you to learn how they're going to communicate, so you can see how they're going to learn. And then have them handle objections that prospects will give, so you can see what their knowledge is with objection handling in the DMs and also cold calling. So you can see what knowledge they have and what desire and ability they have to actually overcome these ones, because a lot of people struggle with this because they get nervous. And test their capacity to understand and research. So test the ICP that you have. Get them to actually research your business, understand the ICP, give them a fraction of it so that they can try to make it up between it. And what that allows you to see is their ability to kind of read between the lines, which shows their ability to kind of work more free rather than having to be microscoped and in a box. And then lastly, you want to test across your SOPs of them able to ask questions rather than just pitching. So you want to make sure that they can follow it. So give them fundamental breakdowns of what they need to be doing, then go get them real life actual experience and see if they follow these instructions or they just go off script, and that is a red flag there. And speaking of red flags, like I said, any generic responses or generalized things where they don't think on their feet is going to mean that they're going to be a very generalist SDR appointment setter, and that's not what you want. You want that personalization, you want that ability that they can pick up on communication trends, because it makes it not sound like a robot. If they can't ask intelligent questions or get research or get more information from a business, then this is going to struggle, because again, it's going to come off like an AI robot. If they start to overpromise results or go off cue or start to go off cue on your offer when you've given clear instructions, again, this is going to be a red flag. They can't follow clear instructions. Now, people make mistakes, but they'll verify and check them or ask questions. As well, if you're having to chase them for certain things or results or questions or replies or whatever it is on your test, again, a red flag. An appointment setter that wants this job will get things done straight away, because that's what they're gonna be doing in your job. That's the actions that you wanna see. So you wanna put deadlines on these tasks, deadlines on what you're giving them, and make sure that they get that back way before that deadline, not on the deadline, because if they do that, then again, it's showing unorganizational skills. And if they give generalized, like I did XYZ in this company, but can't specifically explain what they did and how they did it and what the results were, then it's probably not true from my experience. They need to have a lot more detailed questions, so make sure you're asking follow-ups on that, or get them to write it down or explain it or break it down for you, which then will show the gaps in their experience. But if they start to do all these type of things, this is when you know it's a good SDR appointment setter and that you should be looking to hire them, okay? If they're asking detailed questions that is more than what the SOP is that you've given them, this is great. They show that their willingness to learn and ability to go off cue a little bit, which makes them sound like human, which will always get better results. They ask a lot of questions and really want to understand your sales process and what the appointment setter needs to do and what they shouldn't be doing, so that you can understand that they're really curious and they're willing to learn. They understand the consultative selling rather than just the cold calling pitching. They understand that they need to guide the prospect into the call rather than just selling your service, because that will never work. And they align with your business values and the communication style. They get it. They understand your casual nature or your professionalism. They buy into that. They don't just do a one kind of communication style fits all. They're able to adapt. Now, this can learn, but they show that in the interview process that they're able to adapt in that process. And that's an important thing. Like, you need someone that's going to fit your cultural perspective and professionalism or casualism. The wrong person or the wrong personality type won't be able to adapt. Similar to the Philippine style, they have their kind of well vision. You need to make sure that aligns. And they must be comfortable with your approach. You need to be vetting them exactly what you need to do. There's no lines or ums or ahs. You need to black and white explain, this is how we do business. We expect you to work after hours. We expect you to do all these results. You're not going to last here if you don't do this. A little bit more casual, but that is key, because if you set them up to fail by not giving them the expectations of what the role is, they need to be bought into that. And if there's misalignment here, this is going to be a massive issue. You need to be black and white what your expectations are. Do not hide from this. Be transparent. Most of the time they'll respect it, and it'll actually motivate them because they see how serious you are. So the type of test I like to do is, depending on what your industry is and what you're going to be doing, I will give them a template of example messages of what they should be replying to. So you can just screenshot this. If you're doing DMs and you're in LinkedIn right now, get a conversation and screenshot the message that they responded to and get them to reply to that. And then you can get another person's reply and get them to reply back. You can get like 5 or 6 of these to see how they're communicating with you. Now, what you could also do is give them guidelines, like dot pointed guidelines of how they should communicate, and see how well they can follow and how well they can adapt. Hide a few, 40, 30% of the information from them so you can see how they fill the gaps in, because it will show their knowledge. The other one is, if you're gonna want them to do cold calling, get them to cold call yourself or someone else and record that call. Give them a script per se, or give them more of an idea of how your business runs in the ICP so you can see how they go off cue. Now, don't expect them to be perfect here. Just see how they handle with a little bit of random information, because it allows you to kind of like see how they're working on the fly rather than off a script, because anyone can read a script. But those who can go off the script, there's a lot of skill there. And other things like questions could be like, can they explain what a qualified prospect is? Can they explain how they get from A to Z in a general term? Because again, your business may be different. What motivates them? Are they money driven? Do they want to make a lot of money? If someone that says they're not motivated by money, then again, it's not going to be a good fit if you're commission led, because sales is mainly about making money. So let's say you've got the correct appointment setter hired, okay? You've got the person that you need in your business. What we need to then do is make sure that they're able to follow a process that gets them success, okay? So when we're doing this, what we need to have is scripts, we need to have frameworks, we need to have SOPs and KPIs set up from the get-go so they can be successful. So when we're doing this, what you need to look at is, what is that ICP and what is the offer? And build out questions that is going to get them from a curious perspective into they need your help, or they think they may need your help, or that they would benefit from your service. I call this maps, where you're working them through a process to get them to A to Z. Now, for you, having SOPs in place for this from day one is going to help that appointment setter just dial into this and tap into this. So this is really critical that you get this going from the get-go. Now, how I like to do this is you work out the ICP like we talked about, and then you put in certain problems or kind of situations or things that are common that your kind of ideal client will say. So this could be that I struggle with leads, or I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to get more prospects, just for an example. Then you can get into ChatGPT and get it to ask, or get it to build these questions around, mapping their problem, going and inspiring what their goal is, kind of putting, finding out what the path is for them, and then offering the call. And you can go back and forth here to make sure that you build these questions. From there, you have a framework that your appointment setter can follow, and you can have certain questions as an example that they can use, so that way they're off the ground running, okay? Because to get them to just come up with the questions from day one is going to be hard. So if you get a framework in place, you're gonna be in a good place. So from here, when you have clear KPIs set up as well of exactly how many messages they need to do, how many appointments they need to set, how many emails or cold calls, and how many they've been booking, this is going to allow yourself to be really, really set up for success, because you're now having clear measures of what their success looks like rather than just making it up. And you want to track this in a CRM to make sure that you have all the information of who's actually booking and who's actually going to call or close from these appointment setters. Now, you can also use a spreadsheet, which is tracking all these key metrics, and it's really important because you get data and information of what's working, what's not working. And finally, what you want to make sure is you understand what a qualified prospect is versus what not a qualified prospect is. Because if they're booking 10 or 6 or 4 calls and none of them close because they don't have money, then this is something that your appointment setter needs to learn, understand, and actually implement on. Is it the questions they're asking, or are they not qualifying enough? Because it's a waste of your time to be jumping on these calls. Initially, it's fine because you get IP and you can find out what the objections are, but this is very key. Now, management-wise of this, daily stand-ups for 10 or 15 minutes to check in on that appointment setter on what their goal is, what they want to achieve, and any quick questions that they get, so that they're not just firing questions all day. You then want to have a weekly accountability where they're telling you what the results are and what they've achieved and why they haven't, and you're holding them accountable to what they said at the start of the week. So you want to set daily tasks that they're going to be doing, or they set like what their target is, and a weekly accomplishment. And at the end of the week, they're telling you what they achieved and they're giving reasons on why they didn't. And then you're able to push back or give feedback or give information on why they didn't have that. It could be that they didn't do enough messages, the prospects weren't good, whatever it may be. This allows you to hold that accountability. What you also want to do is review questions. You want to go through what they're actually DMing and make sure that you're reading what they're actually saying, because this allows you to get good real-time value and real-time evidence of maybe the things that they can improve, and just be honest with them. A lot of SDRs can be very black and white of how you're responding. As long as you're respectful, if you just explain, hey, you shouldn't do this next time, and document that. You want to make sure that they're recorded and all those calls are documented so that they can go back to it. This is allowing them to get better and better and better. Same with cold calling. You want to keep reviewing constantly, giving feedback. Give them praise, give them feedback on things they can improve on, because they're learning. It's not that they're doing it wrong, it's that they don't know. And the best ones will, once they get told once or twice, they'll then implement this from the future times. So even talented appointment setters can't succeed without structure. The best systems will always replace someone that has years of experience. Training time massively decreases when you have all these systems and processes in place, and they ramp up quickly. You can get full productivity out of them just in 2 to 4 weeks. And this is why it's so important compared to the standard industry of 2 to 3 months. It's also very important to understand the true investment outside of the hourly rate. For example, the salary cost, as we talked about, differs depending on experience and where they're located. But the other things that you need to factor in is all the time that goes into managing, training, and building out the processes. Now, alongside that, you have the system setups as well that you have to manage, and it's the constant management of this. Then you've got the management ongoing of the setup, managing their performance, managing what they're doing, and answering questions that, previously you didn't have to do because you're probably doing it yourself or not doing it at all. And the other thing is time to productivity. When and how quickly do you want them to be actually getting results for you? Because if you're going a lower budget and a specific country, if you're having to train them up and ramp them up, it could be 2 to 3 months before you see an ROI or an actual really good result, because they're in a month of training or even longer, compared to spending a little bit more and optimizing the country that you go for, which you'll see quicker results within weeks. So let's compare the options, okay? So you do have the option to do this yourself, okay? And that is absolutely fine. Now, what you need to factor in is what hourly rate you think that you are, okay? What should someone pay you? Because this is going to maybe answer if you're going to do this yourself. You also then need to look at, actually, do you enjoy this? If you don't enjoy this, which most people don't, then it's going to be an uphill battle, because you're not, something that you don't enjoy, you're going to resist. And most people push this to the end of the day, which they never do. I was once that person. You then have to factor in the opportunity cost of you doing it yourself, because you have a business to run, you've got other opportunities, you've got partnerships, you've got strategy, you've got all these things that you need to work on, potentially content, yada, yada, yada. All these things, they're going to help drive business to you, but you're focusing on a very important task, but something that's very time consuming. And then there's the ongoing, optimization and time management. There's a lot going on. This isn't like a one-stop shop. You have to continually get this better. You have to analyze this. You have to use the data. So it's not just doing the work. You have to analyze it. And when you're doing that plus deliverability, it becomes quite hard. So let's look at the cheaper setter route. So around $5 an hour, okay? Normally this is in Sri Lanka, Philippines, or Egypt. So like I said, it's lower hourly cost, lower cost altogether, but it requires more management, more training, and more issues, indulging them or basically connecting them into your actual business culture. Normally what you see is quality issues, so poorer performance. You have to churn through a lot more people to find the top talent or the person that's going to help you, which then you end up having poorer appointments. There's a lot of restart costs, meaning that you find someone, train them, and then have to find someone else because they don't work out. The other thing is the challenge of training sometimes. Their language and, again, the culture, certain words, certain ways that you work, sometimes it doesn't fit because they don't understand how to adapt, because they have a very fixed culture in those places. And then you have to think about, like, your management time makes it more expensive if you look at the opportunity cost. So is it actually cheaper? And these are the things that you can, assess, because sometimes it can work, but there tends to be a point in which, you need to go another way. Now let's look at, for example, South Africa, or someone that costs a little bit more, but still affordable compared to, the UK and the US. What you find is that the culture fit is very easy. It's kind of seamless. Alongside that, there's more appointments that come in quicker because training is quicker, and they also get how you guys communicate because they're able to adapt, because they're used to doing this because they've worked for other companies, or because their natural language is the same one that Western countries that speak English have. So the ramp up time is also much quicker because they have experience, and what you're able to do in these areas is get someone with 4, 5, 6 years experience compared to locally, which would be getting like a minimum wage. If they're in the UK or US for £3,000, for example, or dollars, you're able to get them ramped up within 2 to 4 weeks, not fully independent, but very independent, working for you rather than you working with them, compared to other options where you're spending a lot more management time. So you get that time back whilst also getting appointments. Now, what you also see is higher appointment quality, because they're able to vet and ask questions more personalized to get your ICP onto a call that's more qualified for you, which again is obviously going to make you more money because you're not wasting time on bad calls and you're getting better quality calls booked in. And scalability is much easier because you can integrate them together and they'll work with each other. And alongside that, you can set systems in place that's easy to follow. So when you get from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, it works seamless because you're not having different cultures around. And it allows that ramp up time every time to be better. And alongside that, they are money driven, a lot more than other cultures are potentially, which is fantastic because it's somewhat westernized. Sometimes sales is more westernized in this kind of ecosystem, especially in info products. You allow that opportunity where they're hungry for the money. So as we talked about, sales is about money. People want to make money in it. There's no one that is succeeding really in sales that's not driven by the financial aspect of it. And just to harp on it again, you need to be tracking all the statistics for any of these options that you go, because without the data, you don't know what's working and what's not working. So you're getting, messages to appointments booked, you're getting appointments booked to close rate, you're getting appointments booked to no-shows, you're having also appointments booked with XYZ problem, because sometimes there could be that you get 10 calls booked, but 10 of them say they don't have money. You need to relook at so many aspects of the business and why these leads are coming in. Is it because there's not vetting, or is it because the message of your content is wrong? So this is why you have to track all these statistics so that you can understand what's going wrong and what's going right, not just outside of the appointments booked. Because appointment booked as a metric looks fantastic. You get 20 calls booked, but if 20 of them aren't ICP, it's a waste of your time. In fact, it's actually negative because you just spent, let's say, 20 hours on that week on calls that you were never gonna make money for. So you just wasted 20 hours where you could spend that on somewhere that you could have made money. And that's opportunity cost, like we've talked about. So this is a very important thing. This is why a lot of this structure is key to the success. So let's go through the complete hiring process step by step. So step 1 is defining the ICP, which we've talked about, okay? And this is a crucial thing before you even start hiring. You need to make sure you have this. And when you have this, you then move on to the offer side of it, building out the offer. Now you may already have an offer, it may be loosely, you may not have tied it back to the ICP, but definitely take all the problems that are common from your clients, maybe the potential people that said no, yes, all these information, put it into ChatGPT, understand, analyze this, and create the offer around that so you can solve those problems. And make sure that every problem that you solve has an outcome to it. It's no point solving someone's time if you're not clearly defining what they get from saving their time, because some people may not know that. If you can save someone 20 hours a week so that they can spend 20 hours on sales and make 50 grand or whatever, it makes sense to save that 20 hours, because they'll pay you 5 grand to make 50 grand. It's a no-brainer. And that's how you have to position it in their head. What you then need to also have is the frameworks created, how to message, what to message, all the SOPs, okay? When to follow up, everything. Because it's easy, it's a plug and play system that is consistent and easy for anyone else to follow. So you do it once and it's done forever. That's the beautiful thing about this, okay? You're not just wasting it for this one person. It's there ready to go if that person doesn't work out, because it is sales. You then need to decide on your budget. What option do you want to do? Because even if you're doing it yourself, you need to follow everything I just said, because you need to make sure you have the offer and you have the ICP dialed in. Now, alongside that, the actual frameworks that you have may need to change depending on where you're hiring in the world, because if you're going to the Philippines, it's going to be harder to be a heavy word SOP because they may not understand it, or it might be loose. And you may need to be hyper specific and even more controlled than what you allow them to say, because they may not go off script. Compared to South Africa, they have a little bit more understanding and ability to go off script, and it can be a little bit more loose where they can add their own somewhat personality to the messages. Again, all depending on your industry and what you're doing, on what you would allow. Okay, so the next one is sourcing. So what most people do is they will put a job ad up online on, there's the Philippines website, I think it's Online Jobs, or you do it Indeed in South Africa. Now, you will get thousands and thousands of applicants, and 98% of them will not be good. You have to sift through that. It's a lot of time. So in our business, we have someone full-time doing this constantly, okay? And what we actually don't do is do this ourselves. We have AI set up in softwares. Alongside that, we actually headhunt people, because we found that actual doing it on the job ads, it's so much work. And if you don't have that in place, it takes a lot of time. So that's the normal route and the easiest route to do it, unless you have presence in these countries. Now, other ways that you can be doing it is word of mouth, referrals, or agencies. Other agencies that have people ready to go. Some companies will have appointment setters constantly happening. For examment, we have appointment setters applying every single day to our business because we can place them. You do want to make sure that they have some relevant experience in the industry. If that's cold calling and then you want to get them to DM. That's absolutely fine, because when you do cold calling, you have the skill sets and the ability to actually push through the adversity, and it's very easy to transition into DMs compared to if they're just used to doing DMs and they want to go to cold calling, because that's a whole different ball game. It's harder for them to adapt. But from cold calling to DMs, it's much easier, especially if you have dialed in processes. And that's normally what we do. And I would always recommend South Africa, especially if you're wanting to pair in DMs and cold calling because of the accent. It is a fantastic way. Even if you're just doing DMs or any appointment setting, South Africa is definitely my preferred route for a lot of the reasons I've talked about with the culture, time zone, and the work ethic. So step 3, when you found some people, is vetting. So we've covered this earlier. You want to go through tests. You want to make sure that they understand what they're doing, not just go through their resume in the interview, because people can sell well in the interview. You want to go through practical examples of your business or how you do outreach and test them. Don't give them all the information, give them a fraction, maybe 70%, maybe less, depending on your industry, to allow them to fill in the gaps of what you've left out so you can see how creative they are and how they work on the spot. Alongside that, you can be doing stuff like, again, for DMs, get screenshots of past conversations and then get them to respond to it with a framework or an SOP that you have. Alongside that, you can get them to cold call you or cold call someone else and go through that framework. Again, getting them to think on their feet with a bit of the information, because that's what, in the real world environment, it's going to be like that when they start speaking to people, it changes. So for step 4, for the onboarding, make sure everything that you need them to do is clearly defined in SOPs. From day 1, you have KPIs set up. They message you daily on what actions they're going to be doing, and you have daily quick 10 to 15 minute stand-ups or checking in on how they're doing, and they can go through any questions that they have with you, so you have constant touch points. You then have a weekly long meeting with them where you analyze everything and get them to actually present to you rather the other way around. And then that way you always having touch points with them. Alongside that, you want to spend, a good chunk of your time training them and making sure that they're with them. You need to set the expectations up very clear from day 1, because salespeople need to know exactly what they need to do and what they need to be hitting. And if they're not hitting that quickly, then we need to move on. That's the world of sales. It's that ruthless. And make sure you have clear tracking metrics so they can track their performance daily and also weekly, so you can see what's working, what's not working, and what results are achieving when X is done. So step 5 is the management side of it. Purely and simple, appointment setting is purely done on the metrics, okay? Their job is to book appointments into the calendar. So that is what you are managing them on, okay? It's very clear. I find with a lot of salespeople, the clearer you speak to them, the better it is. Yes, you need to nurture their personality, and everyone's different, but if you are hiring correctly and you set the expectations from day 1, you should be able to be very direct, respectful, and be calling them out on when things are going wrong, because you've set that expectation in your business. If you have a lovey-dovey business with salespeople, I've been there, you get a lot of people that just come in and just want to take the royal piss, basically. They want to just be relaxing. That's not what you want in your business. You want the salesperson to be making more money than you, basically, early days, and then eventually you're obviously outpacing them. But that's kind of the goal in this. And once you see that the management's going well, you can start planning for more people to come in and management ongoing from there, and actually document how you're getting on, because you can then take yourself out of the management, which then obviously allows you to be more free and have the time freedom to go do other things in your business. Now, the reality of this is that it's not that simple to do. You will get it wrong and you will make mistakes in hiring. You could get lucky to get the first person, but it takes a long time to actually find who works well. Now, that's not a problem because you're getting IP every time you do this. Though it feels painful to lose months of progress and waste a lot of time, yes, you can learn from it, but it does hurt, okay? And it does take this time up. And especially if you're busy doing every single hat, it's very hard to do this correctly without working an extra 5-6 hours a day during that process to make sure you're catching up on a lot of stuff, because the training side of it may knock out week and you're then on catch-up mode since. If you have expert guidance doing this, or it's done for you, this obviously takes away all of that, because you continue on the business and then you have that person coming in from day 1 ramped, allowing you to free up to scalability and just constantly keep pushing on. And a lot of people, again, they miss out on the opportunity cost of how long 2 months of revenue will cost them waiting for that to happen, compared to fast tracking that and getting that within weeks. Look, I've just walked you through the exact framework and how you can hire an appointment and set up properly. But here is the reality. This takes significant time, trial and error to get this right. Most founders don't have the time to do this properly or make expensive mistakes during the process. If you can see the value of having a high performing appointment setter, but don't want to spend the months figuring out the hiring, the training, the management, and working out the full process yourself, this is exactly what we do. We source, vet, and place experienced appointment setters into your business primarily from South Africa so you can get the benefits of the time zone and cost-effective skills they provide. You get proven SOPs, management frameworks, and even a 12-month guarantee ensuring that that person is actually the superstar that you need. We handle the complexity so you can get qualified appointments into your calendar without lifting a finger. There's a link in the description to book a call with myself or my team to find out more. The difference between founders who successfully scale with appointment setters and those who waste money on failed hires is having proven frameworks and implementation support so they can get it right from the start. Don't learn this the expensive way like me. It is always best to pay for talent than get it wrong.